Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming to our session today on essays, a special type of essays, admission essays. Today, we are having with us our special guest and a dear friend, Justin Van Dyke, who is representing the New York University Abu Dhabi campus. And I assume, Justin, you will have some time to talk about the campuses as well, not just the your topic. It's a very interesting campus. It's a campus of one of the best known American universities, New York University, located in New York. Very diverse, right? But let me not steal your show, Justin. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Thank you for agreeing to do this today, especially because it is International Education Week. It's very busy, and I'm sure that you have a lot of other obligations this week, a lot of other things that you're doing. So thank you so much for doing this and for taking time to talk to our students.
Thanks so much for having me, and happy International Education Week to everyone. This week wouldn't be the same without talking with students in Bosnia. As Alex said, I've been visiting for almost a decade now, sharing information about NYU and particularly the campus in Abu Dhabi. And today I'll be talking about really, honestly, one of my favorite subjects, and that is the personal essay. So let me go ahead and bring up my slide deck. And before I dive into the specific details about the application process and also about um, the um, the of course essay writing and all of those things, I'll share a little bit more about the campus itself. And I think probably the best place to start with that is talking about where New York University is. I know that sounds like a pretty straightforward question. It's in New York City, obviously, but that's really just the surface of the university. NYU is really a global network. So when students apply as undergraduates, they're actually given three different options. One campus in New York City, one campus in Abu Dhabi, and one campus in Shanghai. So it's exact same university, exact same diploma and degree, but each campus is a little bit different in terms of what it offers. So I really encourage you to go out and explore all of these different options. I'll give you a few more details about the Abu Dhabi campus since it's such a special campus, and we also have lots of Bosnian students there. I think this is something that really appeals to students there. But really, you can see here that this is a global network. In addition to those three degree granting campuses, kind of those motherships, we also have academic centers in all of these other cities where you can choose to spend maybe one semester or 1 month. So it really is a global experience having your home campus and getting to travel between these different places. Um, in terms of the application process, you can apply to multiple campuses, obviously. You can apply to New York, Abu Dhabi, or Shanghai, and even all three of them. This process, I would say, is very similar to all other US universities. We use the Common Application. So this is the online form through which you submit all of your details. This process is much more holistic than applying to probably UK universities and other European universities. And I know it can be really intimidating at the beginning. I know this looks like a lot of things to do. I won't go into depth here, but of course, you know that Education USA is a fantastic resource to learn more in depth about all of these kinds of things. So I always tell students, if you see this big list of tasks and things you have to do, don't be intimidated by this. It does take a little bit more work, but there are lots of resources to help you through this process. Alexandra and myself, of course. So through the Common Application, you'll choose which campuses you're applying to. As I mentioned before, you can apply to Abu Dhabi and the other campuses as well. You'll also select what programs if you already know what you want to study. We also want to hear about your academic interests and your academic accomplishments. So we'll ask for your grades from your last 3 or 4 years of high school, also your list of extracurricular activities. I could do a whole nother presentation just talking about those, but very briefly, this is your chance to show us literally anything you do outside of class that takes up your time and shows that there are things that you are important to you, that you're passionate about, and show us that you have accomplishments in those areas. So always keep an open mind in this case, and show us, how you spend your time, what things are important to you. We also accept various standardized tests. This is a policy, a standardized testing policy will really vary from university to university. So it's important to do your research and figure out, the exact requirements. But for NYU, we are optional, so you are not required to submit a standardized test. But if you choose to submit one, we're flexible. We accept a wide range of exams, things like the SAT and ACT and A levels if you happen to be doing Cambridge or IB grades. But we just need one score, and we want your very best. So that's something to keep in mind. We also require one letter of recommendation. This can come from a teacher or a pedagogue or a coach, someone who's observed you outside of class, literally anyone in your life who's in a position of authority, who can speak to your accomplishments. And finally, especially for Abu Dhabi, we have a candidate weekend. So if you are a finalist, then we will invite you to come to Abu Dhabi for a weekend where you get to take a sample class, really see campus, and have conversations with faculty and with current students, and really just see what it's like, really experience student life there. And it is a required part of the process. So if you're applying to Abu Dhabi, make sure that you have your passport up to date and the weekend clear to attend that. So those are the basic requirements for the university. Obviously, the one big thing that I've left out here is the personal essay, which I'll dive into a little deeper in a moment. But really quickly, before I talk about that, I want to talk about financial support at NYU. So we do have scholarships for all admitted students, regardless of their nationality. This will vary from campus to campus, but specifically for the Abu Dhabi campus, we have need-based scholarships that are available to all admitted students. So regardless of your nationality or other specific accomplishments, if you're admitted to the university, then you'll automatically qualify for a scholarship that can be up to the full cost of attendance. So this is really just dependent on your family's financial situation. Again, I know this is a lot of confusing terms and can be complicated, but of course, Education USA can always help you with this, including the CSS profile, which is the form that you'll need to submit. So I just want to emphasize that if you're admitted to this campus, we have scholarships that can cover tuition fees. Also, it can cover housing, meals, even travel to and from campus if you need that. So this is just something to keep in mind if you're applying. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and continue on to the essay. So I'll describe exactly what this is. So this is a personal essay. Lots of US universities require some version of this. It's something like a personal statement. And I think at times it's almost easier to tell you what this essay is not than to tell you what this essay is. So this essay is not an academic writing. So this is not an essay that you would write for your biology class or your history class. It's something that's more creative and personal. This essay is also not a letter of motivation. So this is not the place where you tell us how much you want to come to our university. We do want to hear that information, but this is not the place. And this is also not a CV. So this is not to just brag about all of your accomplishments. Again, these are things that we do want to hear, but that's not the place for this. This essay really should not be anything we can find somewhere else in your application. This is the place to share something new, something we haven't heard about you before, something that will add a new perspective to your application. And it should also set you apart. So this should serve to highlight anything that that you've done that makes you unique and sets you apart from the other students who are applying to the university. I always tell students that to imagine, your best friend or your doppelganger, someone else at your school who has the exact same grades, who did the exact same activities, who got the exact same exam scores. Imagine you're both applying to the same university. And what is it that you can talk about? that will differentiate you from this person? What things will set you apart from the other person? So any of those kinds of qualities and those personal, unique experiences and worldviews, those are the kinds of things that we want to hear. Of course, this should also show off your best ability to express yourself in English. I really want to emphasize that this should be your voice, because really it's like creating a portrait. We want to be able to hear who you are. I'll talk a little bit more about this in depth as we go into the presentation, but just note that we do really want to hear who you are come through this. It is a personal essay. And also, something that makes this different from things like maybe an academic essay that you would send to a European university, or another kind of essay, is that this really should be creative. It should be interesting, engaging. It should make the reader want to learn more about you, to continue on. So you're free to use creative literary devices and things to draw the reader in. It should be memorable and something that's interesting in this way. So you have this freedom here to explore different things and really be as creative and personal as you can. And finally, it should be both a combination of a good topic and a good approach. So the topic or subject that you're writing about is important, but also the approach. So how you tell that story. It's very easy to take, well, not easy, but it's possible to take something that's exciting and write about it in a boring way. And it's also possible to take things that maybe are a little, just daily life or something that might seem ordinary, and make that exciting and engaging. So remember, it's those two things, having that good topic and the good way of writing about it. So for the next part, I'm going to give you 4 steps, and I'll send a copy of this presentation later on, so that Alex can share these so you can have them, but also feel free to take some notes. And since I'm right in the middle of them here, let me move myself over. So step 1 is to explore all prompts. You'll notice that when you are applying to a certain university, or if you're using the Common App, there are a number of different options or questions that they will provide you with. So you can, choose from any of those. And I think a lot of times students tend to just like go down the list and say, I'm going to write to number 3 and reply to number 3 and just write the essay, which is fine. That can work. But you also might be leaving one out that could be a good essay. So my tip is to see if you can write down at least one idea for each of them. You don't have to write the whole essay, but look at all of the prompts. For the Common App, there are 6 different possible prompts that you can reply to. So just look at those and say, okay, if I had to write about this, what would I say? What would my topic be? How would I approach this? And then look at those ideas and say, okay, which one of these is going to be the most personal to me? Which one is going to be really unique and help me stand out? Also, can I talk about something that I haven't talked about somewhere else in my application? Is this going to share something new? Also, is it going to highlight my personal characteristics that I want admissions to know? Does this, reveal my, personal characteristics or accomplishments, or, the way I see the world in a way that it will be interesting to admissions? And really, once you've done that, hopefully there'll be like 2 or maybe even 3 that really stick out to you. And if that's the case, you can go ahead and pick those 2 or 3 and start developing them a little bit more. You can write an outline and say, okay, if I were going to write about prompt number 2, this is my introduction, this is how I'll start, and here's what the middle part will be, and here's how I'll wrap everything up. So you can have that outline and see how that's going. Or if you're writing and you're already you can just start writing, write the introduction and see where it goes. I think at this step, you can do a lot of just kind of free writing, and see, what's really taking off. And then come back to those first questions again and ask yourself, okay, is this still unique and personal? Or am I talking about experience that, everyone my age would have, or even, everyone in my class or my city would have? It's fine if everybody has that experience, but also you want to make sure that it's personal and it's a unique perspective as well. You also want to make sure that it's showing off those personal characteristics that you want the university to know about. And finally, zero in on the things that you should really be focusing on. So figure out what parts of the essay are the most important. you'll see in a few examples that I give that there are a lot of multi-part examples, or there are questions that have multiple parts, so questions within them. So you want to make sure that you balance those out and are addressing the full question. So once you've reviewed them, hopefully there's one that's really standing out to you and you feel like, okay, this is the one that I want to write. And at that point, you can go ahead and turn it into a full draft. So go ahead and write the essay, develop the full thing, and once again, finally come back to these same questions. Ask yourself, is this still unique and personal to me? Is this expressing the ideas that I want admissions to know about me? And of course, you also want to circle back and say, am I answering the question? Am I still, answering that prompt? Because I think a lot of times, of course, when we're creative writing, we start to write and write, and maybe sometimes we'll get off topic a little bit, which is fine. That's part of the process. And also, what I want to emphasize here is that the point of this essay is not to have the very best answer anyone has ever had to this question, the very perfect answer. It really is about using this question as a way to reveal more about yourself. When we talk about, the journey being as important as the destination, that's the idea here. That prompt is your destination. You want to answer that question, but you really want to use the time, this journey, to reveal more about yourself. Of course, you also want to make sure that your writing is clear and well organized. It's fine to be complex, to write on a topic that may be, not simple. Uh, but at the same time, you want to make sure that it's not overcomplicated, that it's too difficult to follow, because this is your one time to speak directly to admissions, and probably your essay will get read one time, maybe one and a half if you're lucky. So if it's rambling or difficult to follow, that can be a really difficult situation. So it's important to make sure that it's clear and engaging, that you keep the attention of your reader, which really takes me into the final step here, and that is to get feedback. So to edit, revise, and rewrite your essay. So go ahead and take that draft and share it with your English teacher or your counselor or your parents or your best friend, and ask them all these same questions you've been asking yourself. Also, of course, your Education USA advisor, who has lots of experience with reading these kinds of essays and giving feedback. So make sure it's not just one person. If you have multiple people, get those different perspectives. And again, ask them these questions. Is this interesting, exciting? Is it memorable? Are you engaged in reading this? Also, since these are people in your life who know you, ask them if they see you in this essay. This is supposed to be kind of a self-portrait. So ask them, hey, if you found this essay and my name wasn't on it and you read it, would you know this essay is about me? And you can also ask them the opposite. If you found this essay and you didn't know me at all, what would you know about the person who wrote this essay? What kinds of things would you think of them? What personal qualities or characteristics are coming through? You just want to make sure that the message you're trying to deliver is being delivered. You also want to ask them, again, to do any spell check or those kinds of things. But what I really want to emphasize here is that you don't want to kind of go into overkill or to suddenly be writing in someone else's voice. I know this happens. A lot of students hypercorrect and maybe try and use words that they're not as familiar with or are really big, or maybe writing in a style like the style of their favorite author or something like that, that's just not, just really not their own voice. The same goes for things like Chat GPT. Of course, it's, if you want to use those kinds of things as tools, or points of reference, that's something that you can use. But at the end, no one else in the world will have the same voice as you. So you want to make sure that you're coming back and relying on your own voice and speaking a way that's true to you. The same thing goes for, your topic and your approach. If you want to write a really funny essay, if you want it to be comical, that's completely fine. If you're a funny person. If you're not, it might not be the time to try out your stand-up. The same thing if you have something that's a little bit more serious or very personal that you want to share, that you feel is a key part of who you are. That's fine as well. But you just want to make sure that this is genuine and it's in your own voice in this way. You also want to ask them what's missing. You know, sometimes when we're telling our own stories, because they happen to us, we'll leave out parts, we'll forget them. So it's important to make sure that it's clear in that way. So again, I know that this is a lot of information and this seems like a really intimidating thing to do, but I promise you, it's not hard. It just takes a little bit of time and working through it, and it's actually a fun thing to do this kind of exploration and think about, you know, who you are and what's important to you. This is a skill that you will need for the rest of your life, not just for applying to universities, but when you're telling your own story, when you meet new people, when you're applying for a job or scholarships or things like this, this ability to kind of important to you, the things that have happened in your life that have shaped you, and these kinds of things. Learning how to do this is really key for a lot of other things. So I really encourage you to take this up if you're applying to, of course, for U.S. universities. And I think maybe just the first through, I'll read the prompt and then I will look at some examples. And I want to emphasize here that the examples that we have are not all real. Actually, most of them are just made up, and they're not full essays. They're just kind of archetypes of how an essay might be approached. So not all of them are 100% good or 100% bad. These are just kind of a way to think about different topics and approaches. So for this first example, we have prompt number one. Some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. So, for example A, we have a student who said, I am of this nationality, which means I speak this unique way, I have these unique traditions, and eat these unique foods I bet you've never heard of. Um, so, in this case, you know, this prompt does answer the question. The student is talking about a background that's meaningful to them. But the problem here is this ends up being a little bit more like a Wikipedia article on their culture rather than about them. So you want to make sure that anytime you talk about, you know, these broader things like your identity or your culture, you want to make sure that you're tying it to yourself and you're revealing things that are specific to yourself, and you know why these things are important to you or why they make an important part of your life. I sometimes get the same kinds of responses for students who will choose to maybe write an essay about their grandmother and what an amazing life their grandmother had and all these amazing things they accomplished and how inspirational it was. But then I get to the end of the essay and I realize I think I know more about the student's grandmother than I do about the student. So always keep that in mind when you're answering questions like this. It should come back to you, to revealing your personal qualities. For example B, we have a student who said, I want to study business, I excel in all of these classes, and I won, you know, this bunch of awards. Um, Great, that's fantastic. I mean, we do want to know this information. This is important, but this is not the place for it. Uh, of course, in your list of extracurricular activities and any honors you've received in the Common App, those definitely should be listed. But as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the place to share something new. So tell us something we don't know already. This doesn't mean that you can't talk about an award you've received or an activity you participated in. And I'll give an example of that in a little bit. You can feel free to talk about an extracurricular activity that maybe you listed in somewhere else in the Common App, but you want to make sure that some additional information is being shared here and that the main just a CV where you're repeating all of this information. Finally, for example, C, we have a student who says, I don't just listen to music, I'm an avid musicologist. Let me tell you about the opera of my life, and in particular, the last chapter, my jazz stage. So I think this is a good example of kind of using a literary technique to kind of draw an attention. You know, it starts off making this comparison to the student's life and music. And when we get to this last stage, I really want to know what's going on here, my jazz stage. How is this going to continue? So this is kind of a nice hook in the beginning to draw you in. So if you're a creative writer, if this is something that's your style, by all means, use these kinds of literary techniques. Um, I mentioned earlier that an essay should be um, or can be complex, but not overcomplicated. That could be an exam stage or the jazz stage anymore. So really everything in moderation here. For the next example, we have a question that's kind of about failure. So the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? I mentioned earlier on in the presentation that some questions have multiple parts. This is one of them. So it's important in these examples to make sure that you're addressing the full question. So you can see here that the first part of it is to recount a time when you faced a challenge. So that's the part where we say, tell us a story about when you faced a challenge. That's the first part. But then there are two other questions that we want to see answered here. So how did it affect you? And what did you learn from that experience? So this is important to take in mind. So you want to make sure that you don't spend, your whole essay just recounting the story about the challenge that you faced, and you didn't really address the last two things, which are really the most important part. We want to see, what happened, how it affected you, and then what were your personal qualities? What was the response? What did you learn from the experience? So for example A, we had a student who said, I failed grade 11 math because I had a teacher who didn't know how to teach well. I want to study engineering, and I know I'll do better with a good teacher. So when we receive an essay like this, what are the kinds of things that we would think? Um, well, obviously the student is probably not very good at math. Also, maybe the student is not taking responsibility for their own actions, is blaming other people, is short-sighted. Um, but really what I want to emphasize here is this is a case where topic and the approach. And the topic itself is kind of neutral. So you could imagine if this really happened to you, if there was something that happened at school where you had difficulty with an instructor and you weren't doing well in the class. But if you approached it in a way to say, hey, I had this difficult experience, but you know what? I founded a study group and I worked with my fellow students to kind of work through this difficult time, or I started liaising with the administration of the school to see what we could do. If there are positive things about this or things that you did that could turn around the situation, then that could be, that could be a good essay. So keep in mind that it really is about that approach. The topic itself, by itself, is not always going to be, a fantastic essay or a bad essay. It's how you talk about it outside of that. So for example, B, we had a student who said, as I started my final lap in the pool, the entire crowd was cheering, including every other swimmer, all of whom had finished long before me and were grabbing their towels. If I set any records that day, it only could have been for the slowest time. But without my participation, my school could not have even qualified. So when I look at this essay, addressing the same kind of issue of failure, we get a really different story. So we see someone who, of course, the failure here was that they were in last place in the swim meet, but we see some positive personal qualities coming out of this. So probably this student was feeling, really not feeling like they wanted to feel the race, that they wanted to finish the race. They probably just wanted to kind of get out of the pool and get their towel and go home. But this student stuck with it because they knew that the team was counting on them, that the school would be disqualified if they didn't finish the race. So we see that the student wasn't just thinking about themselves, but was thinking about their community. And of course, that this student really stuck to what they were doing and finished what they started. So those are some of the positive things that come through. Also, I think there's some interesting literary techniques going on here as well. So you can see This starts kind of in the middle of the action. Maybe some of your language teachers have told you before, or in your literature courses, when the action starts, when the writing starts right in the middle of the action, it kind of pulls you in suddenly. And I'm guessing for some of you, when I was reading this part about the entire crowd cheering and the swimming pool, there's probably some swimming pool you imagined in your mind, or you could hear that crowd or smell the chlorine. There's something kind of magical about this, about being able to draw the reader into your world and make them experience the same things that you were experiencing. If you could also feel what it was like to, be coming in last and the swim meet and how that would feel. There's something that makes this really personally connecting. So if you do this, this is a really special thing. I think some of the best essays are the ones that really draw you into their world, where you can kind of imagine what it's like to be this person, or to imagine what those people are feeling. So again, I know not all students are have their strength in creative writing or doing these kinds of things. So it's perfectly fine if you don't feel like that's um, your strength. I have to say I've also seen essays from students in STEM fields. Actually, one time I read an essay that was written in the form of a computer program, and I'm definitely not a comp sci person. I'm much more a humanities person, but I completely understood where this essay was going, and was communicating in a voice that was like comfortable and interesting to the student. So I'm not saying exactly those kinds of examples, but again, find your voice, tell your story, and what's most comfortable to you, and what's going to be most engaging and pulling in people from in your audience. So the last one I'll go over is the third prompt, asking students to reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking, and what was the outcome? So this is another one that's two parts or multiple parts. So first, tell the story. So kind of set the scene, and then tell us what made you think of this. So this is what prompted your thinking. We want to see kind of how your brain works, and what really got you thinking about this. And then what was the outcome? What did you do about it? What did you accomplish? What happened? What did you do with this moment? And so, for example, we have a student who said, "In my culture, a man aims for a good career, and a woman should aim for a happy family. I don't think this is fair." Okay, that is, definitely challenging an idea, but at the end of the day, this is really kind of basic. We see that the student has identified, this um, this issue of equality and equity, but it doesn't really go much deeper than that. They've just kind of identified that. And well, one thing I want to point out here is that the problem doesn't necessarily have to be solvable, and you don't have to do it in this time. So, for example, you could write about gender inequality and not, solve that problem by the end of your essay. But if you do pick those topics, you want to, again, make them more personal, kind of show what your thinking was and then what the outcome was. So it needs to be a little bit deeper than that. The second example, I think, is a good example for how to talk about an extracurricular activity or accomplishment, but still do it in a way that's not just repeating things that are elsewhere in the application, and reveal more about you as a person. So, for example, B, the student said, "Growing up, no one even spoke to me about engineering. It didn't seem like an option for a girl. But by 10th grade, I'd subscribed to 2 magazines, 5 YouTube channels, and my top Google results were how do you make and how to take apart. By 11th grade, I held our school's first Made by Girls meeting and had 20 elementary school girls bring in clocks to deconstruct. This year, our first meeting had 60 girls." So when we reflect back on this and kind of review the things that are coming out, of course, we see um, right at the beginning the thing that the student questioned. So this idea that women and girls aren't often encouraged to participate in STEM majors or to do those kinds of studies. So she kind of acknowledges this. And then we can see the outcome, that by 10th grade she'd subscribed to these magazines and had founded this club. And really, founding this Made by Girls Club shows us that she was thinking not just about herself. It's not like, oh, I found out how to learn about STEM and to go into these fields. She also thought about the other girls in her school and the girls who were growing up and maybe feeling the same thing that she felt, that these, engineering careers weren't for women. And wanted to address this, and even shows that it went from 20 girls to 60 girls, so she's scaling it. So I think this is a really good example of how to talk about that extracurricular activity, and at the same time communicate these personal values of caring for her community and wanting to scale things and do something about the belief or idea that she challenged. And I'll also talk briefly about the last option. So prompt number 7 is just one of your choice, and this is one of the most popular ones. You're free to write an essay on any topic of your choice. If you have something that you want to address that you feel will fit you better than all of the others, or something that you really want to write about, that's completely fine. But here are some tips that you really should make sure that you follow if you choose to do this. The idea is that if you choose your own topic, you should really make sure that the essay you write is accomplishing all of the things that I've talked about so far. That it is setting you apart, that it's highlighting your personal accomplishments, that it's telling us something new we wouldn't find elsewhere in your application, that it's showing off your best ability to express yourself in English. So it should definitely not be just an excuse to reuse an academic paper or something you wrote from class, or again just a list of accomplishments or a CV, or the letter of motivation. Again, lots of universities ask this. Why are you applying to us? So it's important to make sure that it's not doing any of those other things, and that it is accomplishing the things that I've talked about so far in the application. The very last thing I'll talk about today is the school-specific essay. So this is a separate essay from the personal essay that I've been talking about before. So the essay I've been talking about so far is the personal essay. That is something that goes to multiple universities, especially if you're applying through the Common App. It's an essay that is not specific to the university and will just be sent out to all the schools that you're applying to. In addition to this essay, many universities also ask for a shorter essay that's kind of a letter of motivation, asking why you're applying to their university. On the surface, this question is pretty straightforward. It's a letter of motivation. Why are you applying to our university? But what's important to note is that it's a little deeper than just saying, okay, here's the list of reasons I'm applying to your university. We also really want to know why you're a good fit for our university. So not only why the university is a good fit for you, but why you also are a good fit for us. So it requires a bit more reflection, and you want to make sure that you're just not just repeating things about the university that they already know. So we say, get the essays that say, I want to come to your school because you're ranked #1 and blah, blah, blah. Which is great. That's a valid reason to apply to a university because they have a strong program and something you want to study. But the university already knows they're ranked #1 and, whatever that is. What they're much more interested in hearing is why they're ranked #1 for you. So if you were to make your own rating process, what are the things that are the most important? Is it that academic program, or is it the location? Is it the other students that'll be around you? Is it the student faculty ratio? Is it the relationship with your professors? Is it study abroad? What are those things that you feel like you can't do at any other university? Why is this such a good match? It's, in a way, it's kind of like writing a love letter, in the sense that you get to say, okay, here are all the great things that you're bringing to this, and here are all the things I'm bringing to this, and this is why we're such a great match. So it's good to really kind of think about that, and make sure that you're not just repeating what's already on the website. I know it's easy to fall into that trap of saying, okay, I've done my research and I've looked at this university and these are the things I want to do, but make sure at that point that you're not just listing those back to us, but you've made this personal connection. So I think this sample that is listed here was actually a real essay to NYU Abu Dhabi many years ago. And I think strikes this balance in an interesting way. So this student said, my high school history teacher taught us about the Cold War by sharing his experience of living in post-Soviet Russia. He taught us about European history by talking about his experience living in Paris. We learned about art history by hearing about the museums he had visited in Florence. I was in awe of the way he had learned about the world. And now, NYU AD is my chance to do this. I went to learn about Ethiopia through a roommate from Addis Ababa. I went to learn about China through a J-term class in Shanghai. I went to learn about the marine environment while kayaking through the mangroves in Abu Dhabi. So this is a great way to show that, the student kind of gets the soul of our campus. The idea that it's kind of the opposite of the Zoom classroom, that we want students to get out into the world and experience these things. But instead of just, repeating, something from the website about how global we are, the student said, you know, I know that my roommate's probably going to be from the opposite corner of the world from me. I know that you have these special J-term classes, and I can go to Shanghai for 3 weeks sometime in January. And also, when a lot of people, when they think of Abu Dhabi or Dubai, they kind of just think of all of the steel and glass high-rise, super modern buildings. A lot fewer people know that there are mangroves close to campus and a national park where you can go kayaking. So this is really a great way of saying, I know you. Other people might not know about these things, but this is what's important to me. So if you can strike this kind of balance, if you can talk about these kinds of things, it can make a really great essay. Then very briefly, so NYU's specific optional essay this year is this one here. Again, I won't go into detail, but just know that we do have a university-specific essay that just asks you to respond to a quote from a former commencement speaker or honorary degree holder. So it is entirely optional. You don't have to submit it. But if you want to share a little bit more of this information, you can choose one of these quotes. There are more details on the website, but you can choose one of those and tell why you connect with this, why you feel the same things or how it inspires you. You can even choose your own quote and respond to it. But that's the format for this year, that there's a quote that you can respond to. So I'll go ahead and open up the floor for questions. But before I do that, I just wanted to provide you with my contact information. So this does not have to be the end of the conversation today. If this is something that has inspired you, if you're interested in applying, I'm more than happy to help you through this process, as I'm sure Alexandra is as well. So you can find my personal email address here. Feel free to write to me. You can also see a QR code over here. If you scan that, then you can get on my mailing list. I'll just send one follow-up email. And if you have questions, you can just reply to that. So with all that said, I will go ahead and open up the floor for questions.
Before you do, I just want to say thank you, Justin. It was very informative, and I really loved how you went through all Common App prompts and how you gave the, examples. I think that would really, really help students who are today on this call and who would actually see this later in the future. It was very, very, and I especially thank you because you put that extra part on a school specific essay, like why is this your dream school? Because that's also very important. So thank you. It was as far as I'm concerned, you did my job this time around. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Yes, we do have a question. Somebody raised a hand. So you can
Yes.
speak if you want. Yes.
Could I speak on the mic?
Yes, you're speaking, please.
Oh, thank you. I just have a question. How long would this essay have to be? Should it be long or?
So for the Common App, the limit is 650 words. So that's not a goalpost, so it doesn't have to be that long, but that's the limit. Really like a page and a half to 2 pages. It should be, not too short, but just enough to, really make sure that you cover that question. So it really is kind of as long as it takes you to respond to that prompt, but under 650 words.
All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I would like also to ask a question if it's not a problem.
Sure.
I'm gonna start my video because it's better when you see me like when we are speaking. Do you see
Great.
me right
Thanks.
now?
Yes.
Yes, first of all, I want to say hi, Justin, and thank you so much for these things that you told us about the university. This is unique opportunity for all of the students from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm so sad because there's not so much students here. This is like a quite unique opportunity, but who wants it? Who wants it? He will get it. So
Right.
I want to ask you some things because I am right now finishing my university. I'm finishing my fourth year of theology, but
Hmm.
I'm not like some sort of theologist. I like also psychology. I like communication with people. In my realm of things, when I'm speaking with people, the communication is the main part in my job, like in professor job or priest job. But I'm so much interested in other topics. I'm interested in culture and the things that we can, like when we are talking about the Abu Dhabi or New York or Shanghai. I'm so much interested to speak to like uh, see different perspective from different cultures, from different
Right.
ethics, philosophies, and stuff like that. I want to ask you just one simple thing: do they have like master studies? Can I go there for master studies, or they are just for the universities?
Yes, so great question. We do have some master's programs. At this point, they're somewhat limited. We have a master's of economics and a master of fine arts. And we will also have an MBA that's starting next year. So unfortunately, I'm not sure that any of those fall directly into the categories that you were talking about at the moment. That's at least for the Abu Dhabi campus. For the New York City campus, I think there should definitely be a master's program that's a fit for that. But unfortunately, I can't think of any off the top of my head. But if you send me an email, I'll send you a link and you can kind of track down the master's programs. So the applications to the master's programs are a bit different in that they're really typically directly to the faculties themselves. But I can definitely send you some links to get you started and see if you can find one that would be a good fit.
Surely we're gonna be in touch. Thank you so much for these informations.
Great. You're welcome. Great. Any other questions?
Ivana just texted us that can you please give us the presentation or send us the presentation if it's not a problem.
Sure. So I'll share it with Alexandra, and also if you send me an email just to remind me, I can also send it to you.
And thank you for this opportunity. It was very useful.
Thanks so much for having me and for joining today.
I would also like to invite all students here or anybody later on watching this. You can always send me your essays. I'll be very happy to give comments on them. And just to warn you in advance, I can be sometimes kind of nasty when I'm reading those essays, and kind of very,
Some
very
tough love, it sounds like.
yeah, tough love. But it's like I think it's better that I do it than U.S. colleges. I give you a complete honest feedback. So if it's really good, I'm gonna say it's really good, but otherwise. So please, I mean, feel free to send me your essays or to any advisor in Bosnia. We are here for you, definitely. If there are no more questions, no? Okay. Well, Justin, thank you again. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, at least, to see you like this. If we weren't able to see each other this fall in Sarajevo, but I'll catch you in the spring.
For sure. Likewise. Thanks so much. And yeah, see you in the spring.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.